What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 415. We have a special show tonight because we have our dear friend Danielle Snyder joining us on the show, the champion of the inaugural Teanaway 50K, the Teanaway's Teanaway 100's little baby sibling, 50K, which packs a huge freaking punch.
Yeah,
might be one of the toughest.
Baby.
No, might be one of the toughest 50Ks in the country. We'll talk to Danielle about that, but Danielle is also a wellness coach, a licensed clinical social worker, and she does so much great things for incredible athletes around the world. We have so much to chat with her about. Sit back, relax, everyone. Ginger Runner Live, episode 415 begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 415. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Tuesdays to spend a little bit of it with us. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing well.
Good. Just a reminder that we are doing Ginger Runner Lives now live for the GR crew. So if you would like to watch these episodes live as they happen, head on over to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. All tiers get access to these live shows. But then we post them publicly 24 hours later for everybody to enjoy. So if you want the live experience and you want your questions answered by our guests, consider joining the crew if you have not already. Speaking of live, we're going to be having probably tons of great live questions for our guests tonight.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun.
Yeah, because we are live. If you are here watching live, you can ask questions to our wonderful guest, Danielle.
Yes.
Already got some from the Discord server.
We have a Discord server.
But ask them here in the chat during the show.
Yeah. As Kim just mentioned, our guest tonight, Danielle Snyder. We're so excited to have her on the show. We've had her on the show in the past. She's a wellness coach. She talks about mental health quite regularly in her regular job, but also with me. Full disclosure, I've been seeing Danielle now for a couple of months. It's been fantastic to kind of talk about my anxiety and things that I've been dealing with. Danielle's just been a super supportive part of my process and my healing and things like that. But Danielle also is an amazing adventurer and ultra runner, recently completing the Teanaway 50K, which is the baby sibling of the Teanaway 100-miler. That's not to say that the 50K is easy.
No.
Because it's freaking ridiculously hard. And Danielle won the whole damn thing, which is pretty damn awesome. So we're going to be chatting with her all about that. Before we introduce our guests, though, we do have some individuals we'd like to thank at the top of every Ginger Runner Live episode, and that is the GR crew. It is because of them that we're able to do this show and broadcast live. We also do daily live streams, all of our reviews, all of our films. It's because of the GR crew, an amazing community of runners and athletes of all abilities from around the world. We're so, so thankful for them. So if you are a GR crew member, thank you. If you are not, consider it. One individual in particular at the top tier we like to shout out at the beginning of every episode, Brian Sands. He's been a longtime supporter of everything that we do here. He's also a huge supporter of so many different talented creators in the ultra running, trail running space. He's just a wonderful human being, super inspiring. We're so thankful to have him on board. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, GR crew. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our incredible guest tonight. We have so much to chat about. She's been very, very patient, and her dogs, I believe, are also being very, very patient. Welcome back to the show, Danielle Snyder.
Yay.
Hi.
Welcome.
How are you, Danielle?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing well. First, congratulations on your huge win at the Teanaway 50K. How's the body feeling? How's recovery? Like, I know you're probably, a week and a half out at this point-ish?
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good. It was part of a training race. So the next day I was able to get back out on that course and go and see some of the 100-milers finish. And I mean, just like the complete awe I had for them. I'm kind of like speechless because that is just such a gnarly course. And I think like a lot of times in the Pacific Northwest, it's like kind of underrepresented how gnarly it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And originally I was signed up for the 100, got COVID, had to like switch around my plans. And I was like, so glad I wasn't running the 100-miler, because after the 50K, I was like, yeah, I'm good here. Like, this is a lot. It was gorgeous, but it was a lot of climbing.
Yeah. Like you've done, I mean, we've had you on the show a handful of times now, and you're always up to something. There's some adventure, FKT, some race, some big event. So you have all of this experience. And how did this just for anyone who doesn't know, Teanaway 100 miler and the Teanaway 50K, which is the brand new smaller version of the race, is hosted by Brian Morrison, who we've had on the show a number of times. Just fantastic ultra runner and local runner here in the Pacific Northwest. So this is his new distance. How did it compare to some of the things that you've done, and like what sort of set it apart? Because I think people might not realize how tough this 50K is.
Yeah, I mean, I am like kind of what I like to say, like a beginner mindset in terms of like every race I approach, I think is hard at some level.
Mm.
I always have like a certain level of anticipatory anxiety going into these races of like, I don't know, am I going to be able to do this? Is this going to be too hard for me? Is like this the time that I can't dig deep, which is interesting because at some point I thought like I'm working on it, but at some point I thought I would develop a sense of confidence of like, okay, dude, you do gnarly things like all the time. You know, you can finish. Like, even if you have to walk, you're going to be able to finish these things that you set out to do.
Right.
But I was like, I'm one of those people where I'm like reading the race report and like, I cannot tell you how many 50Ks I've done. Like, I've been ultra running for some time now, but Brian, appropriately so, was like, make sure you pack enough water, make sure like you pack enough of this. And then like before the race, I was talking to my partner and I was like, do you think I should do the early start? Like, I don't know, maybe I should do the early start. And then I was like, I'm going to bring my headlamp. Okay. I'm going to bring all this food just in case. And he's like, dude, your pack weighs like really heavy, Danielle. What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, just in case. Like, what if I have to walk for 50K? Like, I mean, you do end up walking a lot of that, of course. But, you know, but I like at one aid station, right when me and the first place girl, her name is Mel, or anyways, yeah. Went in the same, they were like trying to help me get my water pack back in. And like my jacket fell out, my headlamp fell out, my emergency blanket, all stuff that was like required, but not necessarily like I run those distances and that amount of climbing quite often. So I knew my time frame, but I still needed to like pack everything just in case. And he was like, it's a 50K. What are you doing? I don't know. This is a really hard 50K. So, I mean, it was really, really hard. And I think that like I am definitely someone who gets anticipatory anxiety about being in the wilderness and wanting to be as prepared as possible, sometimes to my own detriment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I know that your resume is stout. Like, you have so many incredibly tough races under your belt from all distances, not just like, hey, tough 50Ks. It's like 50Ks, 50 milers, 100 milers. Like, you've done some of the toughest stuff out there. So it's honestly, it's, and you've done very well at all of them, you know, whether you've podiumed, won, or done top 10, or you're always up there. So it's, I can relate. And it also feels really nice to know that even people at the front of the pack still have these very same feelings that those of us in the mid or back of the pack have, where it's like, I don't know if I can do today's run. And you're like, I've run a 50K every month for like 6 years. How would this one be any different? But it's still like your brain tells you, this one's different. You need to pack more. You need to do this. So it's kind of refreshing to hear you say that.
I'm glad. It's sometimes like intimidating to talk about our own brains. Like, I would definitely rather talk about like physical challenges than I would mental challenges, because it's a little embarrassing to think about like, I do this for my living, which I mean, it kind of is one of those things that I have probably been called to because of my own struggles. Not probably, definitely have been called to because of my own struggles. And so at a certain point, I like, when I'm thinking about it and I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh, if I'm teaching this stuff, then I should be perfect at this stuff. Like, my main challenges during races should not be my brain. But, you know, someone asked me a question recently and they're like, what's your hindrance? And I was like, it's definitely my brain. Like, I struggle so much with that confidence piece of believing in myself, which is why I'm so passionate about teaching it and also like working on it and growing it. And so even though it's like little bitty pieces of growth, when I think back to like, I don't know, a couple years ago to now, even though I'm not where I want to be in terms of trusting my body, I am far further when I wasn't admitting it was something I struggled with.
It's I'm finding myself nodding and wanting to dive into like my experience, having talked with you, and you and I have had many discussions about this same thing, where I am a huge advocate for mental health and for talking about things. And if you are going through a thing or a process at any given time, it's important to talk about it. And you've often told me it's like an injury, right? Or it's something that you can work through. Sometimes it takes time, and that time is important because you're healing. There's lots of specific things that we can probably talk about in today's show, kind of about what you just mentioned, going into a race and believing in yourself and having that self-confidence while simultaneously trying to get others to believe in themselves, and how I relate to that. But we do have live questions for Danielle, one which dovetails really nicely, actually.
Yeah, this question comes from Rachel in the live chat. And Rachel says, what are your thoughts on race anxiety? I find it hard to distinguish between good and bad race anxiety to the point that I canceled some race plans because they didn't feel good mentally.
Hi, Rachel. I'm glad you asked that question. I mean, I think like most of us can relate to that race anxiety. I mean, I used to get race anxiety so bad that I would cry before every race. Like, it wouldn't matter if it was a 5K or a 100-miler. I would just like sit and tears before I even started running.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I like to remind myself and other people, no matter what level that they are, is that this is a choice, and that racing is an opportunity to grow emotionally and physically, and that there are tools and techniques we can use to manage our anxiety, as well as like pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones. It has to be like in an appropriate level, so we don't go so far over that we're completely miserable. So for an example, like maybe starting a race with a friend, or doing a race that feels like less pressure, or having different sets of goals for those races. You know, when I was like really struggling with racing, and I mean, I still do get really anxious, and I have to consciously kind of remind myself, I mean, this is something that works for my brain, is that I'm going to die one day, and that like I'm going to be more sad if I let anxiety impact me than not. But I would start to make different types of goals, like how many dogs can I pet on the course, or how kind can I be to the volunteers or to the other runners? And then kind of normalize that anxiety is okay, but when it starts to impact us physically and like the whole race, then there are probably bigger levels of intervention that could support you managing that.
I mean, that's amazing insight. And again, this is why I'm talking to Danielle regularly now, is because these types of insights are so new to me, and it sort of has allowed me to get permission to feel the things that I'm feeling, and not, there's a lot of negative self-talk that I think happens in individuals' brain, where if they start to get anxious, or if they start to get concerned, or it starts to feel like, why are you feeling this way? You shouldn't be feeling this way. You should be just having fun. It's just a race. It's just a celebration. And it's a quick and easy spiral to get into. So the insights that Danielle's provided with me have been super fantastic.
And I like the suggestions of like start with a friend, or
Yep.
reframe your goal of like pet the most dogs.
I mean,
and I think that
brilliant.
Yeah. And I think for me, race anxiety played a huge part in my last few years, to the point that like I could barely toe the line. And when I did, I was getting sick for no reason at all other than anxiety.
That's a
And so
reason.
my last race, I reframed it, and I chose a race format that I could help take some of that away. So that's when I talked about doing the hamster 32-hour race, small loop course. It's a timed event. I don't have to think about time cutoffs, or really how far I'm going or how long I'm going to be out there. I controlled what I could control.
And your goals were different.
And the outcome and the overall experience for myself was so much better.
You haven't, I mean, that's been your best race. Like, it's amazing. Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. Like, we have to work with our brains. Like, I know for me, running a race like Boston Marathon, which is some people's ideal races, would be so overwhelming for me. Like, there are too many people there. There's too many crowds. Like, that's just not my thing. And so I'm gonna choose like a race like Teanaway, where it's like in the middle of nowhere, and they're gonna be like ready, set, go, because that's like speaks to my soul. And so really kind of like what you did, which was a great job, is like asking what works for me, even if the ultra community is like, oh, you need to do Western states. Like that's not saying anything against Western states, but if that's not your jam, it's not your jam. That's okay.
Right.
So it's like honoring your values and playing up to it. And that was like brilliant of you to do that.
I do want to talk a little bit about this Teanaway 50K and how it actually played out for you. So you've sort of set the stage that even Danielle Snyder can approach a race like this, which is very difficult, very challenging, but you go through the same sort of things that us mid-packers and back of the packers go through, kind of doubting our ability to finish it. This race is really tough. This might be a different day. So how, like, I guess, how long did it take you to sort of get into the groove? Were you able to get into the groove? And how did the race play out for you?
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm not used to actually like talking about my race experiences. I'm used to like talking about like, oh, here's my antidote for this thing, or here's
Right.
what happened. But so I'm gonna give this a shot. But so I was kind of tired starting because I had like a big week leading up. And so I like I remember like running out to the front and being like, what am I doing? And then I quickly got passed by like 4 really tough women. And I just kind of like, even though this is how I run every single race, which is conservative in the beginning because it is just my go-to, I generally speaking feel better the longer races are. It like takes a lot of discipline in my mind to be able to hold back in the beginning, but I also struggle to like push in the beginning because I'm like, oh, this is going to be a long time. So I got like dusted by these first 5 women, and I was like, well, this is where my brain always goes. And something I'm like really working on of remembering like this is my technique versus where my brain wants to go, which is like, why am I running? I can't believe I spend so much time and effort for this sport. Why do I race? This is horrible. Maybe I'll become a full-time dog mom. Like, and I just kind of go down this like lineage of like thoughts that are so unhelpful and such a waste of energy until I end up catching the next woman. In an ideal situation, which I'm working on, is I challenge those thoughts regardless of what position I'm in. And I can enjoy. And like, I think one of the things I really appreciated about beautiful courses is being like, I kind of started to snap out of it and be like, oh my God, like, look at this. Like, I am in the middle of nowhere. It's so gnarly that they don't have any way to get aid in. So like 4-wheelers have to drop off the aid. There's no crew. Like, we're just out there. And like, how cool is that? And as soon as I started to like focus on like the belief system of like being in these magical woods, after I fell and got stung by 2 bees, I started to get like out of my head a little bit. And then I started to like catch the women in front of me. And until I eventually worked my way up to like first place woman. Her name is Mel. I don't remember her last name. She won Teanaway 100-miler a couple years ago.
Got it.
So
Okay.
she like knows, she's a badass runner. And I caught up to her and I kind of was like, oh, I've never like been in a race before. Like usually it's like you catch someone and it's like over, but like I've never experienced like racing with another woman. And then there was this like steep downhill and I lost her and I was like, oh, okay, well, there goes that. But then I caught back up to her again, and at the final aid station, and she left maybe a minute or 2 in front of me. I don't know. And I kind of was like, there's some climbing. I think that I still have some climbing legs left. And Is this good? Am I supposed to be telling this much detail?
This is
Yeah.
great.
Okay, I'm like, I don't know. I've never done this before.
I love a good play-by-play, and when it
Okay.
comes to Teanaway, it's just a gnarly course, very rugged. So knowing that it came down to like an actual race is dynamite.
Well, it did, and then it didn't. So Mel,
Here comes a plot twist.
Plot twist.
yeah, plot twist. Mel actually like took a wrong turn,
Oh.
and so I didn't know. I was just like, man, I'm like not catching her. Which like maybe she like turned it on to this next gear. I mean, she looked super strong. And then I passed this like random woman runner going the other way and was like, "You're first place woman," and I was like, "No, I'm not." And I started to argue with her, which is so dumb. Like, I don't know why I was arguing with this woman. I was like, "You're wrong." I like actually stopped and was like trying to talk to her about it, which I don't know. So anyways, I was kind of like, after I passed her and she said that, I was like, maybe she missed it. I don't know. And I kind of was bummed because I didn't necessarily like want to win a race because someone took a wrong turn. Like,
Right.
I know that shit happens, but at the same time, it's
Yeah.
just like, I want to win because like, it's not that I cheated, but it's like a clean win.
Yeah.
So I kind of like lulled, kind of looked around. I was like, where is she? I don't know what's going on. And then I was like, I got to finish this. I got to run tomorrow. Like, I got to get off my feet. And so I finished, and I think I just assumed she had already finished. So I asked Brian as soon as I crossed the finish line, I was like, where's first place female? And he was like, you're first place female. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, again, like I argued a little bit with Brian, and I'm like, oh, then she must have gotten lost.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like an interesting, it helps me reflect back to like how easy it is to downplay accomplishments or strengths, or like I don't consider it a clean win because I didn't feel like I won outright, and if I win, this is like how I want it to look, versus like, yeah, it sucks that happened. I wish it didn't happen. We both had strong races. And so, it's just really interesting, my brain personally, how quick it is to be like,
Yeah.
you're just not good enough, Danielle. And so really like another, thanks universe, opportunity to like challenge and learn from the experience. I mean, at the end of the day, like this has kind of been my new catchphrase, which is, I think, maybe not the best one, but life goes on. And like, I got up the next morning, I went for a run, I went back home, I went to work, life goes on. And like, I can either use that experience as a way to feel indifferent about myself, or I can use that experience and be like, this is what I did well, this is clearly what I need to work on, and this is how I'm going to move forward.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that like, kind of what you were saying resonated with me a little bit. I don't mean to bring like Hamster up again, but
No,
I had an experience at Hamster where after I had finished, Gretchen, race director, walked over with the third place trophy, and she was like, "Oh, you podiumed," and I was like, "No, I didn't." Like it was like video footage. We'd be like, no, I didn't. Because my brain was going, well, I didn't podium. I'm not good enough. I didn't run far enough. And then when I had realized that she was actually telling the truth, and I did, my brain, instead of being like, oh, that's awesome, immediately went to, yeah, well, there weren't that many women out here today, and that's why I did this and this and this. And so, you talking about your feelings of feeling like you didn't like win-win, like that resonates with me as well. It's like the human brain wants to like work to tear yourself down somehow, rather than be like, oh, you did this thing.
Totally.
Why is that? Like, why
are we the way that we are?
Well, right. I mean, honestly,
I don't know,
Danielle,
great
this is what you do for others, right? So you're able to, I'm going to use myself as an example. If I'm talking to you, Danielle, as we have many, many times now, and I'm saying I ran this weekend and it was a terrible run, or I didn't finish my distance, or that sort of thing, you're the first person to go like, hey, listen, I'm hearing what you're saying, but let's look at this from a different perspective. You're getting down on yourself for not completing your run. The reality is you went for a run. Like, let's look at the positives here, and why are our brains so quick to take something that is a positive and make it a negative?
I mean, there are a couple of different reasons why. So there's like an evolutionary perspective, which people talk about a lot, that evolutionary, it creates us, or it gives us the opportunity to continue to try and like excel. And so, I mean, I don't know if I 100% like buy into this perspective, but it kept people alive. So if they were always looking for the next challenge or looking for like the next bad thing that was going to happen, then they'd be more prepared. So maybe it's a part of that. I think there's also a lot of different concepts out there like confirmation bias and living in a society that really thrives on winning and like bettering yourself, and how we, unfortunately, since we were like kids, we weren't really trained to enjoy or learn from the process. Like if you even think about grades, like no one is like, when you graduate, high school, how was the experience? It's like, what is your GPA?
Right.
So like our little baby brains, even if you're thinking about milestones, I mean, a part of it is really appropriate to like discuss kids and their milestones, but it's also very outcome based. Like, how are you going to get better? What is next? And we often find that by being hard on ourselves, we think that that's going to level us up. And I like kind of am trying to switch that phrase in the ultra community, which is like, you can be compassionate and also hold yourself accountable. I think back to that race, I definitely could have done better with my self-talk in the beginning. 100%. That's what I could have done better, and I also didn't give up. And so it's like holding both those things, because we still want to say like, there are things that can improve clearly, or we wouldn't be doing this sport anymore. But we can still like level ourselves up, cheerlead ourselves, like, encourage ourselves.
Yeah, there's a couple of comments here. I don't know if you want to read them, but Angela says, I would never downplay someone else's accomplishments, just my own. Angela's resonating with this as well.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, so it was Mel Dunn. Elizabeth Glenn is in the chat. Mel Dunn was Elizabeth's pacer at Cascade Crest.
Yes.
But
Thank
Elizabeth
you.
also says 100%, I can tell other people what I can't tell myself.
Yeah.
And what's kind of funny about this discussion is this is also what I think is sort of important about you as a wellness coach, and having that person being able to listen to experiences that you might be having, and to be able to offer you that perspective of like, hey, let's flip this around. Here's what I'm hearing you say, and here's how we can look at that differently. So that's the experience that I've been having over the last couple months while talking to Danielle, is the things that I do very normally that downplay either my own accomplishments or just negative self-talk. I for some reason, my brain just loves to live in that, because I think it's so easy to go there. But having that ear listening to what I'm saying, and be able to go, hey, listen, let's reframe this. Like, I know it's a learning process. It's not a switch that I can just turn on and off. It's like a constant journey for me to try to learn to sort of reframe things. But that's sort of the discussion that we're having now is like, yeah, we can look at something in a different perspective, in a different way, reframe it, and hopefully that kind of continues to help us. We do have, again, live questions for Danielle. Maybe we can get to some of those.
Yeah, there's a question from Vivian, and Vivian asked, does Danielle have any advice for dealing with imposter syndrome?
I mean, it's totally normal to feel like you're an imposter. This is true for levels across the board. I work with people who are just starting out to run their first 5Ks, and I work with some Olympians. And across the board, I would say that everyone at some point experiences doubt and feeling like they don't belong. And I think that a lot of times what we have conditioned ourselves to believe, if we accomplish this, then we will feel like we belong. When the truth is belonging, as corny and cliche as this is, belonging comes from inside. Like, you belong because you are choosing to be a part of a community who wants to support you. So the big picture is that, like, if you are there and you are positively a part of that community, then that's your place. You don't need to prove it through winning a race or getting a fast time or anything like that. I would choose to be around someone who is like has similar values to me any day over someone who wins a race. I mean, if they win a race and they have the same values, awesome. But like, winning is fickle. Like, it's great, it's exciting, and I'm not trying to downplay it, but it doesn't equate confidence or belief in yourself. That is like independent of outcome.
I feel like imposter syndrome has been a common discussion that we've had in our house. So I feel like I often talk about it. And I also hear it a lot amongst elite athletes who might have this resume that is, it's all first places. And they're like clearly a very good athlete, but they're sitting there going like, I don't belong at the top. Like, I'm not that good of an athlete. Like, there's that
or maybe they've had a hiccup.
Or a
at
hiccup,
some
yeah, and
point
it's like, that's the
things have
proof.
changed. Yeah.
And it's kind of I'm always shocked to hear people who I look up to as like the pinnacle of the sport or pinnacle in their field, and they also discuss having imposter syndrome. It's like, holy crap, other people are dealing with it, even though I would be like, that's nonsense what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is the most common? Maybe the most common discussion that you have amongst your athletes? Like, what if someone were to come to you in hopes of bringing your services into their lives and bringing on a wellness coach? Like, what's sort of the common issue that people might be dealing with that we can talk about on the show? So maybe giving some people some insight into maybe something that they're feeling and some connection there.
Yeah. So I often within the wellness coaching work on mindset, and a lot of times I have found that people's mindsets are extremely impactful in how their results can be day to day. So if like I recently wrote an article for, I think it's called Free Trail. They might have changed their name.
Nope, that's it.
Again,
Free
Trail.
Accurate.
Okay.
Yep.
Free Trail, and it's coming out soon, but it's about superstitions. And essentially it talks about how like we as a society, and again, like I want to normalize this, which is why I say like everyone in society, most people think about their locus of control as being external. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with people is like looking at how you're taking care of yourself, which is the wellness piece. And then the mindset piece is how do we make that locus of control internal? So if you are having not your best race, what do you adjust? If you're having not a great day, what can you manage or control? Because it is so easy to give our power away and say, you know, I'm also, unfortunately, one of these people where I'm like, oh, I'm going to have a bad day. I saw a dead crow. And then I'm like, nope, Danielle, like you were raised in a superstitious household, but you do not have to have a bad day just because you saw something dead. Like, I don't even know how that like actually connects in my head, but
What's
I'm like,
freaking crazy is I think we've had that exact discussion, like finding a dead bird or something in the yard and going,
like, oh
shit, there goes the week. Like, that's it.
Yes,
7 days.
yeah. Damn it. Yeah. And so like, you know, recognizing that even though I have this belief, that doesn't have to control my day. Like we like to like intertwine and combine and like make sense of everything. And I know this kind of goes against some belief system, but I am a firm believer like things just kind of happen. Like, sure, like if you're really tired and you're out running a gnarly trail, you're probably going to trip. But are you tripping because you're a bad runner? Are you tripping because you're tired and distracted? A lot of us are probably going to say, well, I'm just really bad at technical terrain. Versus, hey, you're tired. You don't play on technical terrain a lot. And so like putting it back inside versus giving it away, your power.
I mean, that's fascinating because I think that's a big part of distance running, ultra running is, you know, we challenge ourselves, we push ourselves, we want to find those limits and being able to be in the right mindset, being able to kind of allow things to happen as they are. You know, ultras, so much of the equation is problem solving, and like kind of looking at your Teanaway experience, you had to problem solve while you were in the midst of a race, while both mentally and physically, right? So like mentally being able to go like, I just got passed by 5 women. I need to problem solve that because now my brain is saying, you're not good enough. You're not great enough. But like, you can sit here and like solve that problem. And then there's the problem solving of like, do I wait for the person who just went off course, or do I just keep charging? I've got a run to do.
Do I just stand here and argue
Do
with
I
this
just
woman?
stand here and argue with the stranger?
Poor lady.
We actually are going to bring her on the show.
I'm
we
like,
found
sorry.
her.
Did I swear? I hope I didn't swear. No, I didn't swear.
But it's kind of fascinating, like how it's all intertwined. It's all connected. I mean, ultra's such a mental sport. We talk so often about how it's like 10% physical, 90% mental, or whatever, and how much that actually comes into play. So like, why would you not consider bringing someone in that can help you just navigate those thoughts and navigate those things that might cause you strife or cause you a bit of discomfort on a regular basis, right?
Because there's huge stigma. I mean, even I know like this is what I do for a living and this is what I talk about, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I'm still like, ooh, is this something that will I be looked upon differently because I disclose the inner workings of my brain that maybe don't make sense to other people? And I think it's really important because the more we talk about these things, the less people are going to feel alone. And there is like a huge challenge within athletic communities in terms of people believing that because they look a certain way and they are accomplished, that they therefore do not struggle with self-esteem, mental wellness, mental health. And, you know, it's like, how many people have to die before we recognize that, like, you cannot tell by looking at someone what they are going through.
Right.
Like, we're seeing this huge, I want to call it what it is, which is the crisis in like collegiate sports with suicide rates increasing of people being like, I'm so surprised. And yes, there may not be any like blaring red flags that someone's struggling. However, the more we can kind of say like those perfectionists, those people who are really hard on themselves, overachieving, like that doesn't equate success. It can be successful, but what's happening underneath the surface for those who are succeeding according to society standards?
Yeah. I have always been an advocate for seeking help if needed. And, you know, I've been really open with my struggle with anxiety for years now. I pretty much became kind of publicly speaking about it in 2015. And since then, I've talked a lot about it. But this was the first year where I really needed help. And I brought Danielle in, and it's been an amazing process because it sort of allowed me to realize I'm not alone. And that's sort of what I've learned over the years. But to have like a professional be able to say, hey, what you're feeling isn't unique, in the sense that there are lots of people who go through what you're going through, and just feeling that sense of community, but also not aloneness or loneliness has been really, really great. But one thing that I've learned is, since talking openly about struggling with anxiety my whole life, was just the number of people who also are simultaneously struggling with it have come forward and like messaged me privately and that sort of thing, been like, hey, I appreciate you talking about it. I've struggled with it quietly or silently. And so it's always one of those things that I want to address, is if anyone is having any mental health struggles or going through a tough time, there are people who are there that can assist and help and provide you that outside perspective. And that for me has been you, Danielle, and it's been really, really helpful. And I know that this is, for me, I'm trying to like relearn things. I'm learning new things that have helped me. I'm by no means, I'm not sitting here like I'm cured. Anxiety is great.
I am that magical. No.
Danielle is so good. But what it has allowed me to do is go, to open up my brain in a way that's new to me, and I'm not ashamed to say like I'm talking to Danielle or I'm getting help or any of that kind of stuff, because I think there is a stigma to that I was hesitant to really to announce or to talk about. The reality is, as Danielle puts it, it's like an injury, right? And these injuries just need time to heal, and sometimes they need specific tools to kind of help them heal. And talking through things is important. It's an important part of getting your body healthy again, right?
Yeah. And, for people who work in companies, there are often resources available like through your company. I think I'm like blanking on the name right now, but I can't think of the name. But basically, you can ask HR if there's any, like, they offer like short therapy sessions or wellness sessions through some companies. There's also this organization called NAMI, which is National Alliance for Mental Illness, and they have resources. Bigger Than the Trail has a lot of mental health resources, and also you could like always Google mindset coach or therapist. And I think that with the pandemic, some of the barriers of being able to physically get to providers has been taken away, and so you can find a provider in your area potentially that you may not have to go see in person, which sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not. It's not, you might miss something, but it's better in my mind than getting no help or support.
And, I don't want to also sit here and say like, oh, you have to have anxiety or depression to seek someone like Danielle's help or any of that kind of stuff, because I hope that today's discussion with Danielle kind of shows we all have these thoughts before a race of like, oh, I'm not going to do well, or I don't feel prepared enough, or I don't feel trained, all these types of things. And Danielle's services really can help you reframe some of that negative self-talk. I do want to give you a chance here, Danielle. If someone were to reach out to you and seek your services, what does it look like? What sort of happens? Just so anyone can be prepared. Like, oh, I don't even know what a wellness coach does, or what it would look like. Kind of help frame us in the right direction here.
So, I like to first determine if it's an appropriate fit. So if you reach out to me, I will set up a time to talk with you and explain specifically what wellness coaching does versus mindset coaching versus like traditional therapy, and make sure to help you get into the right place. Whether it's with me or someone else, the first step can kind of be reaching out to someone. And so shooting me an email or shooting someone else an email. And then I generally will explain my services in the introduction session and ask some questions and move forward from there.
Great.
And if you're in the GR crew, we do have a link to Danielle's services and site in the pinned post on Patreon as well.
Yep.
And in Discord.
And not on Discord yet, but that pinned post is on Discord, so you can link to the Patreon post. Yeah, if you're a GR crew member, that link to Danielle's services is right there on the pinned post. And Danielle, what's your website again? Remind us.
innerdrivewellness.com.
Boom. innerdrivewellness.
I was like, oh no, pop quiz. I hate these.
Tell us your email, your website, your street address. No. There are still
my GPA.
Your GPA. What's your high school?
Wait a minute, I forgot it.
We still have a couple questions here. Maybe we just get to those and then we can.
A couple minutes?
Yeah, we have a couple minutes. You have a couple minutes, Danielle?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, if you guys do.
Yeah.
So there's a great question from Elizabeth in the chat. Elizabeth says, how do we as a community do a better job to elevate each other's races or running in a way that isn't tied to place or elite performance?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
It's a great question.
I think the challenge is that we're racing for a reason. Like, we do want to win or do well or improve our times. And to me, it's kind of about normalizing that each race is going to come with strong performances and things that you've done well, and also areas that you want to improve on. So I actually don't think I learn more from not having good races than I generally do from having the best races of my life. And I think as a community, we can support and cheer and encourage whatever the place is. So sure, like I'm not encouraging saying like we should not give first place prize money for those big races, because a lot of those people are like depending on it for, you know, their income. However, like sometimes I try to do this, not always when I'm cold, but like cheering on every runner, or if I'm struggling, that's really hard, but I do try to at least do a thumbs up and like, you know, or like, you know, asking people about their race regardless of placement or how they felt. Or I try to do this after someone talks to me about a race. Like, sure, like maybe I struggle with owning my accomplishments, but the first thing I don't ask is like, what place do you get? Like, I'm like, how is the experience for you? And so I kind of think like honoring the hard work that everyone puts in, first, last, middle, people who get cut off, is the best way we can kind of encourage and support, and encouraging like different events for different people. So a timed circular race is just as badass as, you know, a race that has you running through the mountains. Different challenges.
Yeah. Awesome. A couple more.
Yeah, Brian in the chat has a question. And Brian says, I've heard pro trail runners talk about taking advantage of their competitors' mental weakness during races. Is this a healthy approach to competition, especially during ultras? And Brian follows up saying, for clarification, pretending to look good when they are not, speeding up when another starts to struggle unexpectedly, talking themselves up when they see someone else talking negatively of themselves.
I think it's the reality of the sport, right? Like, it's competition. I am never going to like make someone feel bad if they're struggling. Like, I'm going to always encourage them. And I also think that if, you know, you pass someone, are you naturally going to perk up? Probably. Like, that's, you know, we do kind of play by a little bit different rules in like pro cycling. And I was talking to this pro cycler, and he was telling me how they have like all these techniques where like they'll zoom past on a hill, like they'll like sit on the back tire, and then they'll like, as soon as they like can sense any type of weakness, they like zoom past, and then they don't let up until that person is out of sight. And I mean, it's kind of like techniques, you know. I hope we don't play on people's mental weaknesses, and we play instead on their like our strengths. So like if I pass someone going uphill, that's my strength. I'm going to go faster if I pass them, versus like knowing that they like are mentally struggling and then like saying something that kind of like further that struggle.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
I hope that makes
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it.
One more question.
Yeah, let's do it.
This question is from Deb Runs Far, and this is from our Discord server. And it's a little off topic, but I did want to ask it because Deb did ask it quite a long time ago. Deb asks, I've been running for 20 plus years, but with recent events, my husband is expressing extreme anxiety around my safety heading out for runs on my own. Running for me is non-negotiable. So any suggestions on how to calm his fears?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really difficult question. I've had a couple scary experiences running prior to this, the loss of another runner. And, you know, I think it's really normal that people who love us, and maybe even ourselves, I know I've been definitely more nervous right now, to voice concerns. And so what I encourage, including myself and other runners, is to tell people where they're going. And I guess to back up a little bit, I think that sometimes, appropriately so, I don't even want to call this a more vulnerable population, but individuals who are at risk when running, because that could be a small man, that can be someone who identifies as non-binary. Like it's not just women. Get frustrated when they have to change what they're doing. However, I feel a sense of empowerment because that's the only thing I can change. Like, I can only control myself. I cannot control someone who is threatening me. So some of the things that, you know, I do, as well as like I encourage other people to do and to tell their partners about, is like I am hyper cautious of telling people where I'm going right now. Just so I'm extra alert. I maybe am a little too intense on this, but I carry my mace as well as a little noisemaker. I am carrying my phone. I had gone shortly back to using headphones when I was like in town. I have stopped that. And if I can run with other people right now because it makes me feel better, or my dog, that's what I'm doing. And then I'm trying to find different self-defense courses. And so talking to your partner how you are mitigating risk, I think, can be really helpful. So there's risk to everything in life, but knowing it's like wearing your seatbelt rather than just driving. So hopefully some of those tips help.
Yeah, we have that discussion regularly as well.
And we did talk, I think we talked to you, Danielle, shortly after one of your scary encounters on the trail as well. So
I think we had you on the show after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Our show tonight has been with the incredible Danielle Snyder. We're so appreciative of her time, but also her services and her amazing just talent. So Danielle, can you just remind our viewing audience or listening audience where they can find you? I'll give you a second to
Pop
prepare.
quizzes, man. Okay. My email address is DanielleRSnyder@gmail.com. And my Instagram is DIELLE smells. Oh, and one other thing, I'm sure everyone has like heard this, but like making sure your Strava isn't tracking you from your house and going private if you feel safer. Sorry. Went back. Safety is clearly very important to me. Okay, I'm done.
But it is to us too. And
Yeah.
that's something that we did the second that their privacy, like they started to adjust their privacy stuff.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on tonight's episode with Danielle Snyder. We just love everything that she talks about. She's an amazing advocate, but also an amazing athlete. So a huge round of applause for her Teanaway 50K win. Huge round of applause.
I did a teeny one because it was teeny way.
It was appropriate.
Little applause, just little ones. So we're very, very appreciative of Danielle on the show tonight. We hope you enjoyed that. Again, go follow her on social media and reach out to her if you need any of her services. Again, wellness coaching and mental preparedness. She's fantastic. Cannot recommend her enough. If you would like to watch these shows, Ginger Runner live, or any of our daily live streams, Daily Brew, you can head on over to patreon.com/thegingernunner. All tiers get access to some really fun perks, discount codes, Discord server, an amazing community. We'd love to have you join us. We also have GRGR coming up. It's our Ginger Runner Global Run, our 7th annual event, 7 days of super fun running challenges. We hope to see you. It's going to be October 10th through 16th. It's just around the corner. There's still some time to get t-shirts and stuff shipped to you if you live in the United States or maybe Canada, but you got to do it within the next couple of days. But before we wrap up the show, we do like to recognize members of the community who go above and beyond. We call it our GR Crew Members of the Week. Kim, who's this week's GR Crew Members?
This week's GR Crew Members of the Week.
Plural.
Yes. The Berlin Marathon just happened.
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it.
And we did have 3 crew members that I know of that ran and finished Berlin, and that is Florian, Ariel, and Derek. So congratulations to the 3 of you. If you want to see pictures from all 3 of them, head on over to the Discord server.
Huge congratulations to all crew members who ran the Berlin Marathon, and a big congratulations to Eliud Kipchoge. Let's be honest, he's also a crew member, top tier. We absolutely love him being a part of the crew, but he, with his new world record,
jeez,
pretty dang incredible. That's going to wrap it up for tonight's show, everyone. Thank you again so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for more fun. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest.
Thanks
all.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Ginger Runner.